Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who kept us going for over 340 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogamespodcast. Due to the week is Windy City Kid. Thank you.
Thank you, Windy. I'm assuming that's Chicago?
Yeah, Chicago's the Windy City.
Windy City, right?
There's
Okay.
no other Windy City.
I remember that from a Super NES game.
They're one of a kind, okay? Chicago's the only Windy City on the planet. And speaking of one of a kind, we've got a one of a kind sponsor today to talk
That's
about.
right.
Of course, we're talking about Manscaped, and right now they're doing their Got Bush promotion, part of their summer bod stuff. It's the right time of year to be worried about having a whole lot of bush. Heat wave going through Europe, cooking
Yeah.
people are worried about architecture being built to keep in the warmth. We're worried about your balls being built to keep in the warmth.
Because your balls getting too warm can lead to, infertility and stuff. So you definitely want to protect yourself from cooking your own marinade, roasting, toasting it a little too much.
It's a legit tragedy that I am now taking advantage of. Anyway, it's the perfect time to pick up the Lawnmower 4.0 and take care of that bush. But also, maybe you're not in the market for a Lawnmower 4.0. The one thing that you can that's a small way to go towards having comfort in that area is the Boxers 2.0. Get some breathability in your balls life.
Yeah, especially designed to give a little extra pouch, a little extra, cushioning.
Both things we are big fans of.
Absolutely.
And of course, our favorite thing is the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant. All three of these things will make your life a whole lot better in the current heat wave. It's kind of nice that we now have months of experience with these things.
Yeah.
And these are probably our three favorite. I don't know. Do you have a more favorite product that they've sent?
I mean, the Boxers 2.0, but
Boxers
that's
are
not
probably
like a
favorite,
product. That's clothing necessarily, and then like as far as like a product you lather on, this is probably the most impressive because not only does it help with prevent any sort of chafing or whatever, but makes them smell great too.
I had a masturbation joke there, and I'm not going to do it for respect for all of us. The point is we really like these products, and using these products make your balls feel great. So
Yeah, when you
ahead.
you look down, not only will it help you look good and be proud, of what you of your package, but also smell great too. You want to look good and smell good.
Yeah, just don't skip the taint. We look down and we see all that the light touches, but remember to get that taint. Don't forget it. Don't have a nasty
make sure your
surprise.
elephant graveyard smells great too.
If you're interested in getting a better smelling elephant graveyard, please go to manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG for 20% off and free shipping. That's YoVG, all caps, at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Your balls will thank you. Speaking of balls thanking me.
Oh, we're gonna add to this.
No, I just...
Did they send you a personal message?
No.
A singing telegram, maybe?
No, they didn't, but I started exercising in those Manscaped boxers. And
Wow.
normally I'd been using them for only sleeping in and stuff. But no, I was making a mistake. It's a pretty luxurious way to exercise. Anyway, speaking of luxurious, that sales deal that Bungie had with Sony prompted yet another consolidation wars conversation.
Yeah, we talked about how Haven was finished last week, which is sort of like just people who left Stadia, who left Ubisoft, whatever, left EA, I was like, left Ubisoft, then left EA, then left Google, and now it's Sony. Now Bungie has apparently the deal solidified, so they made it official, like welcome to the family, son. Bungie's part of Sony, and Bungie's really interesting because Bungie is the town bicycle of game developers because they used to be a Mac exclusive, not exclusive,
Right,
but like
yeah.
they're either Mac focused or Mac exclusive.
Yeah, they were
Developer,
developing
you
the
know,
Forerunner.
yeah, Marathon
Yeah.
way back in the day on Macintosh, and then originally Halo was a Macintosh game. Um, it's
Yeah,
always
no,
fun to look
and then they got bought by
by
Microsoft. Then
Microsoft,
they
and
hated their
then
overlords. So they were like,
yeah,
just take Halo, Daddy, and I'll go do my
yeah.
new thing. And that's exactly what's gonna happen with Sony. Sony's gonna get density, and then Bungie's gonna go on their own again and make another kick-ass franchise. This is the way of the world. We're watching,
Yeah,
new things
so
sprout.
and they were never owned by Activision. They were never, but they had like an exclusivity deal with
They
them,
did,
right?
yeah.
They had like they were like kind of like attached, where it's like they were owned by Microsoft, and then they became sort of like attached to Activision, and now they're owned by Sony. So
Yeah, how much did Sony get them for?
it was a lot. It because I think it includes density, with the sale.
Ooh,
Um,
they're
I,
loving
I,
that. So
I
there's a
want
new one
to.
coming.
$3.6 billion dollar deal. So that's a lot of money.
That's pretty nice.
Such a real lot of money, which is crazy because like Square Enix sold off like all of IDOS for like, or Crystal Dynamics IDOS for like 300 million or something.
Yeah.
Um, which almost felt like an insult.
Well, I mean, Density is a live services game, right? You can continue to spend money on it.
Yeah, it is, and it's made a lot of money, and it's probably going to continue to make a lot of money. But it's just crazy that they sold off the developers and the IPs of Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain for 300 million, and Bungie alone with Density is worth 3.6 billion, like 10 times the amount. Or actually, it's
It
not 10
reminds me
times.
of that "What have you done for me lately?"
Maybe just 10 times the amount. I don't know. I'm bad with math. I think it is 10 times, more than 10 times the amount.
It was 10 times the amount about.
Yeah. So
It's
crazy.
that "What have you done for me lately" syndrome, where it's like, well, what has Thief done? What has Legacy of Kain done? What is
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's like, Thief and Deus. Well, not so much Deus, but definitely Thief is like, well, Thief has not done anything for anyone lately, and sadly, Legacy of Kain, which is more of Square's fault than anyone. But it's like they could have done stuff with that. But Tomb Raider, I would argue, has still at least had some pretty big name
fairly
brand
recently,
recognition.
yeah.
And Deus Ex had a couple of games where it's like, okay, the
Yes.
second one was a bit of a disappointment sales wise, but like it's only probably because most people just sort of blur the two together. Like, um, it's still crazy low to me, like almost to a point where it almost feels like vindictive or petty
Right.
to sell them for that little. Because the thing is, like, how much they because especially in Japan, and I heard about this from people in the anime industry, is how vastly Japan overvalues its brand and IP. So they did own this. This was a thing that was, part of, their brand. They owned these IPs. These were their IPs, even if they were created by Westerners. But when they decided to sell them off, and like they sold it off for like relatively dirt fucking cheap,
Yeah.
all things considered. So
Well,
it's like they undervalued it in this sale, and they overvalue other stuff. So it's kind of like, I don't know. Like,
it'll be great if they make a Legacy of Kain game that makes, just billions and billions
I mean,
of
that's the best
dollars.
revenge they can do. Just after they
Right.
sold it to Embracer Group, which is a massive, probably. I think I've seen the pie chart. Like Embracer Group, the company that Square sold off IDOS as a whole to, they're the biggest technically, because they're an umbrella corporation of many other publishers, developers. Like,
And they own THQ Nordic, right? That's
they own, yes, they own, what they own collectively around the world is fucking enormous.
Isn't that the company that was like famously like, we just let them do what they do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they said, that, and they're just like, yeah, we just kind of like let them do what they do. They
Yeah.
from the sound of things, as I think we talked about this on his own podcast a little while back, it sounds like a great deal for IDOS, even if it is super undervalued. But like, they're probably happier in a sense, because it's like, well, we don't have to deal with like the weird oversight of Square, and how Square super undervalues their brand and shit. But
Well, here's
yeah,
hoping that we get something out of that.
but that leads to a big question, because now we were kind of like looking at like the larger landscape. Now there's still developers and studios out there that sort of exist that are not technically like 100% owned by major corporations yet. But like, let's talk about like what are the big three, or big, not three, but the big third party studios left. There's Square Enix, Namco, Capcom, Sega, Ubisoft, THQ Nordic, EA. And then from what, and so there's about
Capcom.
7.
Did you say Capcom?
I don't know. Did I say Capcom? Well, Capcom. But there's about 7 big studios, big third party publishers, in video gaming related specifically to console gaming. If you widen that up to like PC mobile, things are a lot different actually, because then you start talking about, Nexon and other major players in Korea and China,
right?
Who have unbelievable amounts of money, right? Tencent Gaming alone. But when you're talking about video game consoles in general, there's like 7, right? About 7 big third party publishers left. And you start to wonder, where is this going? Where is this ending up?
Well, I think the fear is that the first party, Microsoft or Sony, splits them up, because Nintendo's not going to buy anybody. Apparently.
And some people used to think that, people are too big, right? Well, after Activision, I think all bets are off. No one's too big after Activision is $70 billion.
Is Nintendo ever going to? Is Nintendo going to wade into this, or they're just going to let these people get bought up and not get?
They just bought a fucking CG movie house in Japan.
Yeah.
So that they could, and they literally renamed them to Nintendo Pictures, which is really interesting, almost in its own way, because it's like they just are finishing up the Mario Brothers movie with Universal, and Illumination Studios doing that, and it's kind of weird that they're all like, it's almost kind of like Nintendo sees this, maybe this is going to be a big success, so we're going to buy our own CG studio and bye-bye Universal.
Yeah.
Although
right.
I imagine it's probably not that cutthroat. It's probably more like this. And here's what I'm going to guess here. This Mario movie was announced a long time ago, and it has taken a long time to get done.
Yeah, right.
They weren't working on the movie the whole time, but it was like Illumination has their whole pipeline of films, and they had to wait years for the pipeline to open up so that they could insert the Mario movie in there. And then it got a little bump to next spring anyways. Officially. So I think Nintendo's probably looked at this and gone like, we don't want to like wait for Universal's, DreamWorks, or Illumination to have openings in their schedule so they can maybe fit a Nintendo movie. We're gonna buy a CG movie studio, and then we'll just make a fucking CG, and it'll be in Japan, so we can have more direct control over it, and we can, we'll trust those animators more because we're Japan. And
what they really want is that direct control.
Yeah, and then when Universal can literally just take it and distribute it worldwide, which I don't know if that benefits or doesn't benefit Universal. In a way, it maybe is better for them, because it's like Nintendo's probably going to be paying. They bought this CG studio; they're going to be paying for the productions that come out of it, and then Universal, all they have to do is distribute it and take a fee. But then again, they're going to have to spend their own money on marketing, probably, or at least partially. So
they can't hide as much in the accounting if they don't control the whole project.
That's true.
But distribution is where the money's at for them. They would like that a lot.
I imagine that's probably what's going to happen with this. So it's interesting that in all these game developer consolidations and acquisitions, Nintendo's still kind of just staying out of it. And then here they go and they buy a fucking CG studio, so they can rename it Nintendo Pictures.
All right, hypothetically, if Nintendo was going to buy one of these major third parties,
well, I said from
Square?
the beginning, it's Square, yeah, and
Square?
The reason it's Square is because Square's operation, MO, and work culture most closely resembled Nintendo, which
miserable.
Sounds vague. And it sounds sort of, I don't know, and I don't want to say esoteric, but like it sounds kind of weird or like unimportant on a business side. And I'm like, no, but it is in Japan, and oh, but it is especially for Nintendo.
Nah, office culture,
work culture
yeah,
is very important to Nintendo. So much so
Yeah.
that they have publicly stated this in shareholder meetings about how they don't buy a lot of studios because they want people with Nintendo mindsets. You know, and they bought Next Level Games in Vancouver because, and they even said like, you know, that was done. That was more of a like, kind of like force. But like on the other hand, they worked with them for years, and they're like, we believe they're most like Nintendo. This was a big part of Retro Studios, where like they weren't like when Nintendo did buy them, and originally they had multiple projects in development, but like their work culture was not. And then Nintendo cleaned house and then went in and sort of like built up Retro to be what Nintendo wanted it to be. And it's probably why they've never wanted to buy studios en masse ever again.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to buy a studio and then find out like the studio heads shooting fucking pornography at his mansion on the weekends and then using their workstations to upload and servers to host it, you know, on the back end without their knowledge. Yeah, that happened with Retro. That's a fun one.
Well, maybe we do a side tangent to explore that a little bit more. What the fuck?
So this was the guy who went on to make the Guy game of all, you know, which should be no surprise.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but when Nintendo found out they were using like computer stuff that they had provided Retro that he was using to like, you know, do his little offhanded, you know, side gig, Nintendo kind of hated this. So they literally bought out his shares of the company and got rid of him immediately.
Yes, I understand why they would want to do that. I don't understand why somebody who is relatively successful, like it's not like he needed the money and that's why he was making, but he just fucking loved porn. He was just like a
We love porn and partying. He wanted to be because this happened in the mid to late '90s. This all comes from Iguana Entertainment, and a lot of
I remember this now. Yeah,
all the first person, you know, boom craze, and made a lot of instant millionaires, you know, back then, and they're all driving Ferraris to work and shit, and
then he made the Guy game, and it was, oh my god, yeah, okay, I remember who this guy is. Yeah, that's wild. I wonder what happened to that fucking guy. He's probably doing fine.
Yeah, there's a What Happened episode about it. I don't think. Apparently, it's been very hard to like kind of find out because Guy Game got taken off shelves because one of the girls he recorded, you know, flashing her junk around was 17 at the time.
That guy. Of course, that's exactly That's exactly the fucking guy. God damn it.
I don't miss that era of gaming. I don't care who you are. I don't miss it.
Did well on the original Xbox. The only place it did well. Okay, but so who do you think could convince Konami Gaming to sell its IP?
Sony.
Sony's the only one? You don't think Microsoft could come in and
I mean, Microsoft would be interested, but Konami would probably own. I don't know. It's hard to tell because it's so weird to say this too. Because it's like, well, Japan likes to be very insular. I mean, duh. I mean, but like, it's funny to say like Sony would be more likely. I mean, they still have a Japanese presence there, and it's what makes it more likely. But again, like most of the operations are in California now.
Yeah, Sony
for
Gaming
PlayStation.
is an American company now.
Yeah, so it's hard to say because it's like I don't think Microsoft would offer, and then Konami would just like quietly stonewall them probably.
Here's my big brain thing.
I didn't list Konami in that list of third because I don't even consider it third party anymore. They make like one game every other year now at this point.
My big brain thing is Microsoft buying Konami's IP and then snaking Kojima. Snaking Kojima away to make another.
There were rumors that Sony was doing that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
which might be
had
why
high hopes.
Yeah, which is probably why Konami won't do it because they don't want to like sell their IP and then like literally have that guy make it.
Yeah, print money for somebody else.
So yeah, where are we at? Like, well, so we established that if Square were to do it, people would think Sony, and Sony has been buying a lot of exclusivities with with Square Enix.
Yeah, like one first year exclusives or console
Yeah,
exclusives.
a lot of time exclusive Final Fantasy 16, 7.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of timed exclusivity with Nintendo as well. So I don't think it's a lot of people would just assume Sony because of the PlayStation 1 era, but that era is over. Yamauchi's dead. The Square CEOs of that time are long gone, kind of thing. So I actually now here's the thing. It's not about whether or not, who's going to get it. It's whether or not the Square want to be third party. Probably not. And I think that's the reality is that like Square, it probably doesn't want to sell itself. Even with offers, it probably turns it down.
So you're saying they want to be third party? They don't.
I think Square wants to be third party because I think there's a kind of they have a massive music and merchandising label within the company that they make a lot of money off of that's not gaming related, which they would probably lose if they got bought under. But I mean, like, the Square care about that because they're just going to golden parachute it out. But there's that thing. But there's the other thing too of it kind of almost works in Square's favor to have every company kind of like grabbing an arm or a limb, right?
Right, yeah.
Like Sony's like, hey, make our shit exclusive, take my money, and then Nintendo goes, we want exclusive shit too. Give us exclusive game releases, and then Microsoft's like, give us Game Pass, give us, make this game available on Game Pass. It's like they're basically like they're like the popular kid or at school or whatever who everyone's trying to give them attention, everyone's trying to give them money for stuff. So I almost think for Square they're in like this position where it's like we don't need to be bought by anyone because hell, this is better. I'm getting money from everybody.
Well, I often wonder if it's a thing like founders of those companies, if they're younger companies, just want out. And this is a easy way to do a big retirement. You get bought out. Now, granted, Square's been around for a long time, so it's probably not the founder sitting there like, I want out. But I do, the executives would get bonuses. I feel like there's a temptation.
Well,
there.
I think there's a temptation for like the highest of the highs at these companies. And I feel like for the rest of the people, they could get fucked if they get bought or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't think Square will ever, in the foreseeable immediate future, Square's not going anywhere. But if it were going to come down to a thing of a consolidate or die, I actually think Nintendo would throw their hat in the ring for Square. And they might even go with Nintendo, honestly, just because.
Yeah, just because they want to make another Crystal Chronicles.
Well, but also, honestly, I'm like, people probably thinking I'm focusing way too much on the xenophobia, but god damn it, it's fucking real. Nintendo being a 100% wholly Japanese company would probably look better to Square Enix if it was like, we have to sell, we have no choice, right? Like, whether it's 2000 again and Square's bankrupt, or 2001 we're bankrupt, and Sony doesn't want to like cash them out or whatever, and it's like, okay, no one wants to float us money, they just want to buy us. Who do we get bought by? I honestly think Square gets bought by would go for Nintendo in that nightmare scenario. Now Konami, okay. I think in the nightmare scenario you were putting up before, I think Sony makes a bid, and I think Konami just sells to Sony for IP in that nightmare scenario. Well, actually that's a good scenario for Konami now.
Well, yeah, they got nothing going on. Although I would really love it in those instances for like Microsoft to attempt a hostile takeover. It'd be beautiful. Just I don't know why. Those are the only times where I want Goliath to win.
Yeah, and then the actual Goliath, the true Goliath of Japan is actually Namco Bandai. They're fucking enormous because of the Bandai anime media conglomerate.
Yeah, which is why they're never going to be in trouble.
Right.
Yeah,
they're never going to be in trouble. They're not. But like, let's put this in a nightmare scenario, and then it becomes like, well, the obvious thing is Sony would be like the obvious go-to because Sony has so much investment in anime. They own so much of the anime market now. But here's the thing. again, Japan loves to overvalue its branding, right? They will get outbid hard by Microsoft. If Namco Bandai, if the entirety of Namco Bandai suddenly was up for grabs, Sony would absolutely love it, but Sony would have trouble affording it on its own. But if it was a bidding war, Microsoft is literally just going to come in there and just slap Sony straight across the face with his dick and be like, "Sit the fuck down!" And here's, bam, we will outbid you by billions.
Thus, living up to an anime stereotype of Americans, just nothing but gold rings and slapping shit around and being loud with a cowboy hat on.
Pretty much.
But
yeah, and the reality is that if Namco were somehow up for grabs, which they're not, and they're not going to be, Sony would love it. Sony would kill for it, but Sony doesn't have the money. Microsoft literally would be like, okay, here's $70 more billion. I mean, they're not worth 70 billion. They're actually worth way less than that. But they're still worth tens of billions of dollars. But Microsoft would be the one to just be like, I know, I know my Game Pass is still, weak on Japanese, games. Bam, and Microsoft has a working relationship with Namco. They're probably one of the most open to Microsoft Xbox stuff of the Japanese game developers is Namco, followed by Sega. So, yeah, Microsoft's money is going to go a long way to winning that nightmare scenario. And then, of course, is Sega. Sega actually started as a transcontinental company in Hawaii. Technically, Service Games. It technically was American at one point, and so, but they're definitely not now. Who would they sell to if they did sell to? Who would Sega Sammy? Sega Sammy would sell to China. Probably first and foremost, which I know we've been ignoring Tencent, but it's again, if we want to get real here, Tencent can buy any of these companies. If it came down to a bidding war, Tencent could win all of it. Microsoft would be the only one that'd have a chance, but Tencent would probably just be willing to go the extra mile for it. So,
isn't Sammy a Korean company?
I believe so. Or they're definitely pachinko. They come from that sector. The Sammy whatever. But yeah, my guess would be they'd probably just get sold to Tencent or something. But on the other hand, if we're talking just the main three, I think Microsoft would probably put the most money down for it. Nintendo might feebly offer well, we could keep it in Japan. But Microsoft might be yeah, but way more money.
But fucking money.
But way more money, which ultimately probably would just swing things in Microsoft's favor. Rounding out Japan there. So that kind of rounds out Japan for the most part. There is Kadokawa, the people who own From Software, and they're that major publishing mogul.
But are they ever really going to sell FromSoft?
No, because they love the idea of people paying for FromSoft games like Namco and Sony.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that leaves Capcom. Is Capcom ever realistically going to get bought? And why should it be? Sony seems like they would be the ones that want to buy them, right? Because they
the rest and I would argue it's Sony, because Sony would just be like Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, Resident Evil as a Sony first party would fit Sony would look at that very, very favorably. Anyone would look at it favorably, but I think Sony would probably win that. And the reason I would say, well, you keep saying Microsoft would outbid them. Sure, that's true. But here's the thing. Here's the awful truth. Capcom is not worth anywhere near as much as most of the other big publishers that I listed. Sega, Namco, Square Enix, even Konami, they're all worth way more than Capcom, because Capcom doesn't have they're not part of a bigger corporation, and they don't have a big multimedia thing. As they whore out their IPs to anyone who'll make any shitty fucking live action TV show about their stuff. I mean movie. I mean animated series. I mean, they're all bad.
Not one good one.
Or bad. So the thing is, it's Sega's part of Sega Sammy Holdings, and Namco is part of Namco Bandai. Square merged with Enix and makes Square Enix, and then again they all have other things that they do, big other things. Capcom does make merchandise a little bit, but I mean, like, not to the level that Bandai does, right? So, the thing is like, Capcom's gonna not be worth anywhere near as much as the other ones, and Microsoft doesn't need Capcom anywhere. Probably like Microsoft would love to have Capcom, but I think on the other hand, Microsoft's also like, we've done fine without them for the most part. We're doing okay. Where like Sony would be like, oh fuck, we need this. Like Sony would want it, and I think Sony would be the more likely to get it because Sony has the longer, deeper, working relation roots with them. I think Sony gets Capcom because it's not going to go to a bidding war. Really, it's literally. And the thing is, here's the other thing. Here's the other crazy thing too. It doesn't necessarily even have to be about a bidding war. There was a point in time where I might be getting it backwards, but Square was about to buy Tecmo. Squaresoft was going to buy Tecmo, and then on the 11th hour, before the deal could finalize, Tecmo announces they were merging with Koei, and Square was like, "What the fuck? Like, why? That's nowhere near. They're nowhere near as big as us." And the thing is, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about like, who gives you the most money. Sometimes the people just decide they'd rather be partnered with someone else. Like, why did Yamauchi at the 11th hour decide he'd rather partner with Philips instead of Sony? When Philips was what's a much smaller company, and all it was literally just to fucking fuck over Sony because he didn't like the fact that they weren't going to get residuals for every CD manufactured. So
yeah, I guess we're not really keeping the pettiness in mind that is at play here, that could be at play.
yeah.
I mean, any company really, but it does seem like there is a Game of Thrones-esque pettiness to Japanese companies.
Yeah, and the thing is, they would literally cite, what reason would Capcom have to not take a bigger check from Microsoft over Sony? And like, because they don't match our workplace culture and ideals. Well, literally is what they would say.
Yeah.
And speaking of, we forgot Koei Tecmo. Koei Tecmo's a thing. I actually think Nintendo's probably the most likely to buy Koei Tecmo because Nintendo has done so many partnership games with them at this point. Sony's the other one who would be between Sony and Nintendo, most likely. So,
well, how much is Koei Tecmo worth? How many franchises do they have?
That's a good question. They actually have a lot of franchises, but not a lot of them are big. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's a lot that have sort of like just fallen behind. Let's see. Revenue.
Reset my camera.
They make more than Capcom. Shock. Yeah, their income's like they're worth a little bit more than Capcom. A little bit. But I can't get a definitive yes or no on it. Going by peer analysis or whatever. Their income is higher a little bit, but that's not their worth.
Well, it's just so weird that like Dynasty Warriors is gonna, or Samurai Warriors or any of that shit, Nintendo? You think so?
Yeah, I think Nintendo was okay. So for Koei Tecmo, I say that because they keep making fucking Nintendo games, right? Like they're making Fire Emblem games for them. They're making, Fire Emblem, not just Fire Emblem Warriors, which just came out by Koei Tecmo, but they made Fire Emblem: The Three Houses. They made 2 Zelda Warrior games for them right now. They've had other multiple things that they've done. They've done stuff even with Pokemon Company. So, yeah, I wish
I didn't
it was
realize
easy.
they were involved with Ninja Gaiden.
Oh, you didn't know? That's Tecmo, yeah.
Do they own Team Ninja?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And apparently they did Fatal Frame?
Yes. Which Nintendo actually now owns half the IP. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I never really thought about all the things that Koei Tecmo owns. But they own quite a few franchises.
Actually, well, I'm looking at like I'm trying to get a good gauge on what their net worth is, and it's not super high, but it's not nothing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, actually, like looking at all the franchises that because they have Neo, they have Romance of the Three Kingdoms.
Yep. Yes, sir. All of them. So they're around there where they're around that Capcom value, but maybe a little more, maybe a little less. It's kind of hard to. But again, they're a merged company, so it's not even like Capcom, who's basically had to weather the storm by themselves, right? So
it's sort of interesting that Capcom is so small, considering that they have a couple of the biggest franchises of all time.
Yeah. Well, here's the craziest thing about
Evil and
Capcom.
Street Fighter, right?
Capcom was not a major player on the world stage as much as you might think until the 360 generation and on. They're only recently worth a ton of money, right? Or only, I would say, like their franchises are big. Capcom until Resident Evil 5 almost not almost, but like very rarely broke 2 million sales on any one game.
Including Resident Evil 4?
Resident Evil 4, like 2 million was like the most it ever sold on one platform.
No shit.
No shit. No shit, dude.
Well, you don't think about that because Resident Evil's so influential now. Like people,
yes,
everyone.
And 4 was highly influential, and a bunch of people played 4 either hand me down or trade in or whatever, right? But yeah, like RE4 is crazy to think that like no single version of that game really broke 2 million sales.
But altogether, it must have broken.
Altogether, but you end up having like 4 different things that sold 2 million, so it sold like 8 million in the end. But yeah, like until Resident Evil 5 really came along, Capcom did not have massive game success. Their best-selling game of all time came out, like a few years ago, Monster Hunter World. Sold 18 million copies.
Wow.
Like that's their best-selling game of all time. And then like their second best-selling game of all time is RE7. And their third best-selling game of all time is RE2 Remake. Capcom did not come into its own until recently, really.
Well, that's just
crazy,
wild to think about.
enough.
Yeah, because you think about those 3, Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, like those are both huge.
It was a weird. Here's the weird. I think the weird thing with Capcom. Capcom always had this trouble like making a game a success on both sides of the world. They did this thing where it's like Resident Evil is fucking massive in Western countries, mostly North America.
Which is
but
the largest
Japan is like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. Resident Evil, right? And then Monster Hunter, for years, was this massive sales juggernaut in Japan. And then anytime they got it out to America, America was like, until World. So, but now they finally found that recipe to make Resident Evil like a global big game. Monster Hunter is now a global hit smash phenomenon. Street Fighter is kind of that, but Street Fighter had the problem of like it's spread out over 30 million releases of a game, right?
Yeah, and fighting games are still somewhat niche.
Right. Like it's the biggest of the fighting games, yes, but like yeah, you still have that sort of like, well, they haven't really blown up the way League of Legends has blown up or Counter-Strike, Overwatch has blown up.
So in a lot of ways, Capcom, it's probably the worst time to buy Capcom because they're worth the most right now.
Well, they're only going to get they're like a fucking house on the housing market where it's just like they're only gonna get more and more and more and more valuable. So
right now is not the time to say that. The housing bubble's popping right now, man.
Oh, please, for the love of God, please
come down.
Please be true. Please be true.
Would really love that, please.
I'd really love to buy something someday.
Someday. It's like retirement and a house. My God, pipe dreams. Yeah, no, I guess Capcom really wouldn't be a big draw. I sort of thought Capcom would be a huge draw for Microsoft. Just because
I mean, they're definitely a draw, but I think Sony would sort of like buddy partner, like, hey,
But we're friends, man.
we
Give me the friend discount.
Yeah,
Fair.
yeah. I
Okay,
think that
well,
would
what
win
about the
out.
French?
Ubisoft, who
Ubi.
resisted hostile takeover from Activision for years.
And now could get bought by the company that bought Activision.
Microsoft?
Would be sort of poetic.
I almost think they'd get swallowed up by Embracer Group,
Oh yeah, you think so? I guess
which
that
is
makes
a
sense.
third party gobbling a third party, but like I kind of see it.
Well, Embracer Group is a juggernaut, right? I mean, and they're European.
And they're European. If it came down to it, Microsoft would probably offer a bigger paycheck, probably. Ubisoft's weird because it goes back to what you said earlier in the episode. What have you done for me lately?
That's right.
And I think this is where
poorly.
Ubisoft actually comes into trouble. Because the last few years have not been great for Ubisoft. And I mean that in two ways. One is the game releases. Game releases have been kind of iffy past couple of years, right? Not that there have been bad games, but it's like, like it's like people just kind of keep going back to Rainbow Six Siege, and there was like that zombie Rainbow Six game. What happened to that? Who knows?
I don't actually know.
Beyond Good and Evil has disappeared. They've finally resurfaced Skull and Bones, which has been around for fucking ever. Does anyone remember that there was a London-based Watch Dogs game? There was that Starlink game with the toys to life thing that they tried to revive for some reason. Like nobody even talks about Just Dance anymore. Like
Ass Creed Valhalla. Well, they had
Ass Creed
Mario
Valhalla is
Rabbids
good.
that came out this year, right?
Sure, but it's like I'm not saying they don't make any games. I'm just saying like their release schedule for the last couple of years has been spotty, I should say, or sort of okay kind of thing. Like they're not a juggernaut.
They haven't had any big ass wins. Far Cry 6, I guess, last year was a fairly big hit, right?
Kind of, I guess so. Yeah, but like I don't. It sold well when on launch, but I don't remember hearing much about it after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it kind of like fizzled really quickly, which is weird to say because it seems like a lot of these Ubisoft games fizzle quickly, which is hilarious because their whole company MO was about making even single player games have like live service like stuff where they keep updating and keep adding microtransactionable things over and over and over to a game, and now it's just like people don't even talk about it. So there's been rumblings or just sort of speculation that the reason Ubisoft is doing this is to put themselves up for sale. Like maybe they're not making any big announcements or making any big deals because maybe there is a sort of something's rumbling in the wings.
Yeah,
you know
like
what I mean?
They really want to be bought. Like
yeah, either they really want to be
shit.
bought or they're in the process of it, which is why you're not hearing about new products as much. Hard to say. The other side of the coin is that, and this is, I think this is, I don't have proof of this, but I hope it's true, is that Ubisoft has kind of been ousted for being a really shitty place to work. And I think people are leaving.
Name one developer that isn't somewhat shitty to work for, though. There's just like, I feel like
we're hearing more and more about it, like the guy from Naughty Dog who's talking about how like Last of Us 1 is now made without crunch. Insomniac, people boasted about Ratchet and Clank was made without any crunch. So Insomniac and now in Naughty Dog, and I think Sony Santa Monica has also been like there's a lot of these companies are kind of like turning around because I think there's been a real sort of like I think there's been an exodus of talent, honestly. Like,
yeah, they're burning people out.
I think they're burning through people. And Ubisoft is, not only is it crunch at Ubisoft, it's also harassment. Like these people, high up people at Ubisoft were like serial sexual harassers, apparently. Or at least there's a lot of smoke. A lot of smoke, we just, even if you want to claim there's no fire, like there's definitely smoke there. And I think with Ubisoft, there's probably been a lot of departures, and people don't fucking want to work for Ubisoft. I'll go work for Sony Santa Monica. I'll go work, for any of the other big franchises, with Sony or someone else. Like, like it almost feels like Ubisoft is like known as like kind of become this sort of place to work. Like I don't want to work there either. So and I wonder if maybe that's having the effect like we heard with Star Wars Eclipse, where it's
Right, yeah.
this game's actually nowhere, like nothing's happened because no one wants to fucking work for David Cage. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Michael Ansel quit the company, like just sort of up and left. However many years Beyond Good and Evil 2 is away from release, and the reason apparently is because there were going to be, allegedly allegations were about to surface about his misconduct. So it's like maybe people just don't want to fucking work for Ubisoft because they've been known as a shitty place to work for too long.
Yeah, no,
Like
it's they're on the verge of just all that shit coming out, so they're going to get bought for a cheap price. That could be what we hear in the next 6 months.
And here's the thing: I'll say the former is more likely than the latter. It's if there is a chance of Ubisoft getting bought out, it's probably more just because they want to get bought out rather than any sort of like, oh, nobody wants to work for us. I mean, obviously, there's still hundreds of employees that still work and develop games for Ubisoft right now all over the world.
Right.
But I mean, you can have you can throw a lot of bodies at a project, but you can't easily throw senior talent at a project.
Right.
So, and if if senior talent is like, I do not want to fucking work for you people, that is not something you can easily replace. So,
yeah, it makes me wonder though, in these like consolidation wars, because that's the big fear everybody keeps talking about. It's like, oh, everything's becoming first party, and that's going to be really bad for gamers. Which I don't know, it's debatable. You can go back and forth on whether or not it's going to be good or bad for us.
I think a healthy work environment is going to be better for gamers.
Well, yeah.
Crazy enough as it might seem, because I think that's going to end up with better product.
Yeah, and I don't know if it matters anymore how many third parties are left. Because third parties they're always going to exist. They're always going to pop up. But like major third parties.
Yeah. And there's the indie scene. And on the indie scene, you don't see a shit ton of exclusivity with indie scenes. The only time you see exclusivity with indie scenes is when an indie says, I'm not making an Xbox version or a PlayStation version of this indie game, and people go, why? And it's like, because we're a very small team, and our last game or our last project had like very, very, very little amount of users playing it on Xbox. So I do not have the manpower or resources to simultaneously release this game on every system. So I'm only going to develop it for the system where like people are buying it on, which usually ends up being PC and Switch. So it happened even with Hades. Even one of the biggest indie games was like came out on Switch and PC, and they're like, well, why did it take so long for the other ones? Because we're a small studio, we don't crunch, and we're going where we think the numbers are going to be the biggest right away. And then once we're done there, then we'll put it on the next one. And that's what they did. So, but that's a different ball game for indies, right? That's a whole different reasoning, ball of wax, what have you. And I think, if an indie publisher developer can put a game on everything, they absolutely will. Indie devs, I don't think want to be exclusive at all.
No,
I think
the biggest audience, obviously.
Yeah, an indie dev wants their shit on everything if they can manage it. So you will always have that. And the thing is, like, we're getting into a point where it's like indie devs are really, really making a good case for a good name for themselves too on product. Like the TMNT Shredder's Revenge game. Holy shit! Like, okay, it's not a big 3D open world, whatever the fuck, right? But that game is absolutely of the quality of the Konami games. In fact, it is much better than any of the Konami games of the past.
Because
and
it
looks
frame rate?
because it can go up to 6 players. It has online. The animations are way better. The fighting combat system is way better. Like, we're getting games that even if they're not fucking Grand Theft fucking Auto, they are basically take this game that is a all-time classic, and we're gonna make it better, and we're gonna make it bigger, and we're gonna make it online, and it's indie technically, and it's fucking great, and people love it, and it's on everything, and it has crossplay, so you can play. Well, Ninja Turtles has crossplay PC, Xbox, but not anything else. But yeah, like it's just indie devs are really kind of killing it in some instances, you know. So that's why I'm not even for me. I guess as a I don't know if this is be like a final thought or anything.
Yeah.
Is that for me? I'm not worried about third party publisher consolidation because I think indies are killing it anyways, and indies will always be there. And there's so many exclusives, timed exclusive, console exclusives. It almost kind of feels like they hardly feel third party sometimes. You know what I mean? Like Square Enix hardly feels third party sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I honestly, if you would have told me that Sony already owned Square Enix or Nintendo already owned Square Enix, like I would have been like, oh yeah, I thought that already happened.
yeah,
Because I actually thought Final Fantasy VII was totally exclusive to Sony. I didn't realize it was only a timed
it's
exclusive.
timed. It's only showed up on PC so far, but like
Right. Because the amount of time that it was an exclusive basically means it was an exclusive. You know,
right,
at a
like
certain point,
a
that shit
whole
just
goddamn
becomes it.
year, and then becomes longer with Intergrade and stuff. So yeah, the only like the one big one we didn't talk about I think was EA, and EA is interesting because it's almost too early to say something because apparently EA is actively trying to get bought, and they're actively trying to get Universal Comcast to buy them. They're actually looking for outside the industry to purchase EA.
So they
Um,
can convince someone they know what they're doing.
I don't know why EA is apparently desperate to get bought out.
I think it's probably because they owe a lot of money over the Star Wars bullshit. But that's just me. I'm, you know,
Well, I was actually going to say, do you think they owe money? Do you think there's like
yeah.
some outstanding debt maybe they're
Yeah,
in,
I
or
think they did a bidding war to get the exclusive rights to the Star Wars stuff, and then they fucked that up real bad, shit that bed real bad, and didn't make any of the money that they thought they were gonna make to pay
Hmm,
those licenses, basically. So now they're sitting there like, we need someone big, and Disney's no
yeah.
longer in the game making business.
Yeah, and
So
apparently that's one of the people they've actually gone after. They've gone after them. Please buy us. They did this apparently to Apple, to Disney, to Google, and to Comcast.
yeah,
Um,
I bet the reason that Apple said no is just because they didn't want to owe money to Disney. Apple and
it's funny because
Pix,
they're so in bed with each other.
but they really don't like each other.
You don't think so?
No, yeah, no. There's that whole thing in Bob Iger's autobiography about how much of a split there was between Apple and Disney because of
Mm,
Pixar, and how
yeah,
he had to have a personal relationship with Steve Jobs to open that door, and how it was always tenuous at best. And it's like there's real animosity between Apple and Disney. So probably EA was like, please buy us. And Apple was like, we don't want to owe money to Disney, so fuck them. Maybe. I don't know. That's all in my head. That's my head canon, is all I'm saying.
mhm.
I don't know who's EA's or who's going to buy EA. I don't even know who would benefit from buying EA, honestly. They have a bunch of sports ball stuff, so I guess that would make sense that Microsoft would go after them. But I think Microsoft's trying to break away from that kind of reputation. They don't want to be the bros anymore.
Well, the thing is that I think Microsoft knows they don't need to buy EA because like EA is so interdependent on having both Xbox and PlayStation audiences
Right.
that if anyone who does buy them, if they don't continue to release Xbox versions, they're shooting themselves in the foot. So it's like
Well,
it's
because
probably
everything EA does is licensed, right?
practically.
Like I can't think of a
Well,
single
they're dumping FIFA. Like I think next year or this year is the last.
again because they don't want to pay the license.
They're tired of paying the fight license to FIFA. Yeah,
Yeah, so you're gonna get
um,
EA football.
yeah. They had some really lame name for it or something like that.
Yeah, it's
Forget
just
what they
not
said
gonna
they're
go
going to
well.
call it, but
I I can't think of a single franchise in recent memory that EA has that isn't licensed. I guess I would
Well,
have to Google that.
they're waiting. They did buy BioWare years and years ago, and they are sort of trying to rebuild BioWare so they can get Mass Effect and Dragon Age back up.
Right, but it's been years, is what I mean. Like I know they have
Right.
them. I know that they
And
have.
they technically have Titanfall and Apex. So
Yeah, well, they haven't. Oh, yeah, I guess they have Apex. Yeah, I was gonna say they haven't done anything with Titanfall in 5 years.
well,
6
the
years.
Apex is technically sort of.
Titanfall. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's fair. I mean, Apex is doing well still, isn't it?
Yeah, and Apex is doing well. So it's like EA has constant earners. It's
Okay.
just interesting to me that they're so apparently they are desperate to get bought.
I mean, I guess it's not that shocking that they're desperate to get bought. They've been hitting rough times, like I said, with all their licenses. So
Yeah, well, they've had that, and they've had lawsuits, and they've had like government looking at them over that Star Wars shit, and
yeah, because of like getting kids to gamble.
yeah, getting kids on hooked on gambling. So it's like I kind of wonder if they probably saw Activision buying or Activision getting bought by Microsoft for a shit ton of money, and they've kind of constantly been like they've been because remember EA used to be the biggest third party, and then Activision overtook that, and it's been like a slow sort of like widening of the gap. It's kind of like Yahoo watching Google take all its lunch money.
The saddest story ever told. Yeah, so I guess really like that's the consolidation wars, but if you have a different take, hit us in the YouTube comments if you're watching the video, or hit us up on Twitter. You can hit me at Funkmachine, PHUNKMACHINE, or you can hit Matt at Doom Assists Me, or hit a stream. We haven't promoted your stream in a while.
Yeah, twitch.tv/assistmedoom.
And let us know how you think the consolidation wars are going. Are they going to start busting out some armies? Maybe we're finally getting the cyberpunk future we want, and this is the beginning. Microsoft will be the bad guy. No, is Microsoft the bad guy, or are they the good guy in the cyberpunk future? Is anybody the good guy? Nobody's the good guy. I don't know. Everybody's bad.
It's interesting because like even within a giant corporation, it can rot real quick.
Right. Yeah. On that note, on the note of rot, we've got patrons to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames. Our dude of the week was Windy City Kid. Thank you, Windy City Kid. And our producers for this episode are The Arnett, Scrunami, Kuroi35, HyperViper89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.